But I wanted to continue on this conversation. I noticed that we had a caller actually earlier who dropped off after sitting on hold for about a half hour. My apologies, it happens. A lot, actually. But who had asked the question, what was the difference between Reagan's tax cut and Kennedy's tax cut? Because Jack Kennedy ran on in the election of 1960 on a pledge to cut taxes. And that tax cut is what was cited by Ronald Reagan. If you're old enough to remember the Reagan campaign of 1980 or the Reagan tax cuts of 83 and 86, actually there was a series of them during that time, but the big one I think was 83, 84, 85, when he got below 50%. You will remember that Reagan constantly cited Kennedy. You know, Jack Kennedy did this, so I'm just going to do more of it. It worked. It stimulated the economy. So what was the difference? Well, you will find, first of all, you will find people who say the Reagan tax cut stimulated the economy. Well, how do you know that? Well, because the economy was better the year after than it was the year before. Well, here's the simple reality about that. You go all the way back to the George Washington administration, and other than during periods of time that we call depressions, every year the economy is always better than the year before, particularly if you got a little bit of inflation. But it's better because, you know, the country grows. There's more people. There's more economy. There's greater efficiencies. Business grow. I mean, you know, it's just every year things grow. So saying that the economy was better the year after the Reagan tax cuts than before proves the Reagan tax cuts did it is nonsense. The economy would have gotten better no matter what. It's like Romney. You know, it's when Romney was running for president, he came out and he said, you know, here's my plan. My plan is in the first 4 years of my administration to create 20 million jobs or 10 million. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact number. I think it might have been 10 million jobs, but whatever. He said, I'm going to create this number of jobs in the first 4 years. And the CBO came out and said, you know, it doesn't matter who's president, it doesn't matter what their policies are. The economy is going to anemically grow perhaps, but it is going to grow by an amount that will create this amount of jobs, whether Romney does it or not. Romney had no answer to that other than maybe that's where he got the number from. I don't know. But there was a really significant difference between Jack Kennedy's tax cuts, which actually weren't Jack Kennedy's, they were Lyndon Johnson's. Kennedy proposed them in the debates in 1960, and the clip I'm going to play for you is from Jack Kennedy's debate with Richard Nixon in 1960. And he proposed them into law in 1963, and he was assassinated before they could be passed. And so Lyndon Johnson passed them in 64. So they're really LBJ's tax cuts, if you want to be technically accurate. But what it did was it lowered the top tax rate from 91% down to 74%. And the following year, tax collections went up. More money was taken in. And Reagan pointed this out over and over and over again. I just got so sick of hearing that because I knew why the tax collections had gone up. See, Kennedy was, he was from a family that in today's dollars was a billionaire, or certainly a multi-millionaire. Joe Kennedy built one of the, big American fortunes out of bootlegging and the stock market manipulation, basically the Roaring '20s, doing all that deregulated stuff. I mean, Joe Kennedy was kind of the Ken Lay of his day. Only it didn't go bust, he didn't get caught, and he created a dynasty. And so Jack Kennedy, having been born into this extraordinary wealth and being extraordinarily wealthy himself, he knew that by 1960, nobody was paying 91% income tax, even though that was top rate. Now, many people didn't pay it because they just didn't let their income go above $3 million. But a lot of people had income over $3 million and they didn't pay it because they had figured out two principal ways to avoid taxes. And the first was claiming that their income wasn't income, it was capital gains. So instead of their company paying them with income, their company would pay them with a oil painting, and then they would sell it a few years later after it appreciated, and they'd say, oh, it's a capital gain. Capital gains are taxed at a lower rate. And back then, that lower rate was well below 50%. In fact, it was, I think, around 28%. It might have been, but actually it was below that because Reagan raised the capital gains rate up to 28% in 1983, as I recall. So the first was capital gains. Capital gains was like, this was the rich person's tax. And so Kennedy said, we're going to raise the capital gains, which was part of the Kennedy tax cut. They cut the top tax rate, but they raised the capital gains rate. And then the second was closing what he called loopholes on deductions, which were all these various business deductions that wealthy people could take, their private jet, the 3-martini lunch, all that kind of thing. And he had a whole list of things that he wanted to close the loopholes on. And he said, and if we do these things, we'll have extra money. And with this extra money, we can build more schools, we can build more hospitals. Actually, instead of my telling you, let me let Jack Kennedy tell you. Here he is laying out his plan. First the rationale for it, then the plan.
We are in the...
Whoa, I'm sorry. That was Alan Greenspan. You don't want to hear Alan Greenspan. Here's Jack Kennedy.
Third, I think it's possible to gain a $700 million to $1 billion through tax changes, which I believe would close up loopholes on dividend withholding, on expense accounts.
Now, notice he didn't say tax cuts, although it was a tax cut. It was from 91 to 47.4% for the very top rate. He said tax changes because he knew that what he was proposing would increase revenues. So it really wasn't a tax cut. Rich people were going to pay more money. And what was he going to do with that money? Here's Jack Kennedy.
Third, I think it's possible to gain a...
Here, try it here.
So in my judgment, we would spend more money in this administration on aid to education. We'd spend more money on housing. We'd spend more money, and I hope more wisely, on defense than this administration has done. But I believe that the next administration should work for a balanced budget, and that would be my intention. Mr. Nixon misstates my figures constantly, which is, of course, his right. But the fact of the matter is, here is where I stand, and I just want to have it on the public record.
Now, isn't it amazing? Nixon, of course, was saying, oh, Kennedy's calling for a tax cut, and I'm calling for a tax cut. Let's lower the tax rates on the millionaires, and quack, quack, quack. And Kennedy, and just like Reagan did, Reagan lied about Kennedy's tax cuts too, or tax changes, excuse me. And so at the very end, Kennedy feels like he has to say, Mr. Nixon is lying. Well, here, I think this is it right here.
Budget, and that would be my intention. Mr. Nixon misstates my figures constantly.
Misstates
which,
them.
Which is, of course, his right. But the fact of the matter is, here is where I stand, and I just want to have it on the public record.
Yes, and where he stood was right here saying we can increase our revenues.
Third, I think it's possible to gain a $700 million to $1 billion
wow.
through tax changes, which I believe would close up loopholes on dividend withholding, on expense accounts.
So he's proposing a $1 billion tax increase back in 1960. That's like, maybe a $100 billion tax increase in today's dollars. I mean, that was really significant. Back then, the minimum wage was what, $1.50 or something like that? And, now it's $7. So you could do the math. I mean, it would be over $10 now if it was where it was back then. So here's Kennedy proposing a tax increase of over $1 billion. Nixon had been arguing for a tax cut, saying that Kennedy was in favor of a tax cut. Kennedy says Nixon's lying. And then the next generation, Reagan comes along, and he lies about what Kennedy did. And to this day, you have conservatives saying, well, Jack Kennedy cut taxes and it raised the income to the government. No, he didn't cut taxes. He proposed raising taxes. He cut the top rate, but he raised the tax base. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
As Abe Lincoln said, figures don't lie, but liars sure can figure.